This is, I believe, the seventh episode of the Weathering the Storm series, the workshops that we're doing to really help businesses navigate these challenging times. And we really like to pull together experts in different areas of expertise in things that we can really apply to our business. And we've had a number of different topics, from cash flow to dealing with employees and all kinds of different topics. We're always open for new topics. So if there's something that you'd like to hear from some experts on and get some good resources to deal with, put that in the chat. Let us know what you'd like to hear, and we'll consider that for a future episode. The group we have today is great. We're going to be talking about leadership intelligence, and the concept behind this is, as leaders, we have to be coming to our teams, our employees, as well as our customers, and really helping them understand or navigate these times. And it's kind of lonely as a leader. It's challenging as a leader to be able to do that. And so we really need to be smart about how we actually go about this. So today we're going to talk about some of the physical and mental things you can do, some of the hacks, maybe, if you will, to help you become a better leader and to manage some of the challenges that we're going through. We're going to talk about how to communicate better, also how to leverage your culture and how to use that culture to connect with your employees as well as your customers, and really increase your emotional intelligence and gauge where you're at with that. So today on the call we have Lori and Susan with Concilio, and they're going to kick us off, and then we'll be followed up by Ray Allen with Peppershop Media, and then Cheryl Adams, my co-host, will be sharing some content for emotional intelligence. For some reason, I'm having a hard time with that one today. Cheryl is with Rectify Partners, and so she'll be sharing that. And then Minnie Anderson is going to talk about really how to pull the communication together with your staff and customers as well. So let's get started. One quick housekeeping note before we do. Sorry, Lori and Susan. We're gonna ask that you have any questions, put them in the Q&A or in the chat. We'd love to be able to answer your questions. We're going to have some time at the end of this to answer questions. We will end at 10:30, but if you have additional questions that we can't get to, we can certainly answer those offline for you. So put those in the chat or Q&A. We'll take care of those. Without any further ado, Lori and Susan are the co-owners of Concilio, and Concilio is a Boise culture and kind of a culture consultant company, rather. And they do an excellent job of really helping you unlock the potential in your organization that you always wanted to be able to get to, and it always seems to be elusive. And they take it down and make it practical and give you tools that you can actually use to really make your culture sing and love what you do. So Lori and Susan, I'll let you guys take it from here.
Thanks, Brent. Good morning, everyone. If you are one of those people like me and you're always multitasking, I encourage you to actually be present for the next hour and a half and get what you can out of this. We would love any participation, so throw things in the chat. I'm Lori, this is Susan, and like Brent said, we are with Concilio, and basically we would love if everyone could love their work. And when people love their work, they have more energy to not take it out on their families when they come home, and actually make our community a better place.
And beyond that, we actually believe it's possible. It's not a lofty goal for you to love your work. And some of the very primary tenets that we stand on, when you can love your work, it means you can love anywhere you are. So our thing is we teach practical tools to shift mindset very, very quickly. And when you know how to do that, your external circumstances don't matter as much. And that's what we hope you take away from today.
We have a handout, and we've thrown it in the chat, and it's also going to be in the ebook that Brent put out. So feel free to grab that. So today we want to talk about basically that as an owner, it can be scary. I know cash flow is scary. We don't know. It's kind of uncertain. It's uncertain. And when you don't show up as your best self, your staff feels that, and then that fear spreads. And then it is that self-fulfilling prophecy. So we want to give you tools today to kind of help that so you can be the best leader.
We believe in the power of choice, but if you don't know what you're choosing, it doesn't even matter how decisive you are or confident in your decisions if you don't have the clarity in where you're going. So today we want to talk a little bit about overwriting your DNA, how our brains are wired up that actually keep us stuck. There's a big premise that over New Year's, when people make resolutions, 94% of them are never realized. And people usually lack motivation at the 2-week mark and give up by the 6-week mark. Why is that? We know in work, in personal life, in community, what we need to do. We really struggle with the how to execute it part. All of us are very smart individuals. We know what it looks like to work out, to eat healthy, to be the best self at work. We just sometimes lack the fortitude and the how to do so. And that's because our brains actually are here for one thing and one thing only, to protect us. And our brains do this thing where they don't like the unknown. They like to explore. And we need to explore the unknown right now because everything is uncertain.
I want you to think about something that's holding you back. So Susan, and what's holding you back from making that change? So Susan just said that 2-week mark. I think about all the, like when we were sheltered at home, and if you were like a lot of people, you were like, oh, I'm gonna work out every day, or I'm gonna eat healthy, or I'm gonna get my office cleaned up, I'm gonna get my email done. And then after about 2 weeks, it starts to wane, and 6 weeks it's gone. And so we've almost had 3 cycles of 6 weeks. So think about those things that you like got geared up to try. I'm gonna cook every night, whatever those are. And what do you think, just write it down on a scratch piece of paper, what do you think is holding you back from making that change happen? I'm gonna give you just a second to think about that. I know, I wish I could see all your faces.
I know.
All right, because I can't see your faces, we are gonna move on to our next part. So hopefully you do have your hand out. If not, we'll walk you through it. So I want you to rate your physical well-being, and there's a reason we're gonna tie these to our brain. So on a scale of 1 to 10, what's your quality of sleep? 10 being, man, my head hits the pillow, I sleep great, I wake up energized. 1 is, my sleep quality is horrible. Hydration, I get plenty of fluids. Eat well, again, 1 to 10, and then movement, 1 to 10. And we would ask that you average those out so that you get an average score. And I would love if you guys would please put them in the chat box, if you could just give us your average score. And then also, what is your lowest?
Yeah.
So is lowest quality of sleep? Is it eating well? Movement? Throw that in there.
And the reason we're tying the physical to mental, while you guys are please throwing this in the chat box, is because it's impossible to separate our mental and physical well-being. And so we're not saying go out and be a CrossFit athlete and you have to be the top of your game physically. What we are saying is our bodies are made to move, drink, sleep, eat, and those very basic things we tend to forget. And when we're working at home, there's really no boundaries anymore. And a lot of people put their health and well-being secondary. And when we do that, we shortchange our brain. When we shortchange our brain, we become anxious, frustrated, and overwhelmed at work. And if we can't perform our best at work, the best hack is to just do a quick check on quality of sleep, hydration, movement, and eating.
And I want you to think about, as a leader, being the model for your people. So if you aren't taking care of yourself, how are your people? So if you're expecting them not to be doing these things, or if you're not doing them, they're going to think they're not supposed to do them. And so if you do want to get through this storm that we're in, the best thing you can do is model the best behavior for your family and for your employees.
And if you're just going to pick one, what we found of late is sleep is the lowest for most people. And sadly, it's the most important, the most relevant. If you have to pick one of those quadrants to spend the most time on improving, it would be sleep. It has the maximum impact on all the other tenets. So they say 7 to 8 hours of sleep at night, but really what they found is it's not the length, it's the quality of sleep. And so how often are you waking up? How long does it take you to fall asleep? Because being in bed for 10 hours really doesn't matter if it's not good quality sleep.
And I want you to kind of think about your brain. So when you don't have good quality of sleep, your brain goes to the lowest of these, whatever number. So quality of sleep. If you have crappy sleep, I know I'm not as creative, I'm not as fast, I'm not as energetic. And so all of these, that's the reason our brain goes to that lowest, and then we're not able to perform the way we want to at work.
And there's a lot of research right now about sitting is the new smoking. And if you think about it, whether we're at home or at work, we're in our cars sitting, we show up at work or at home in the office sitting, we get up and go to the kitchen and get something to eat and sit. We finish working, we sit on the couch. There's very little walking around in today's society. And if you can just, one quick hack for movement and all of it is get up every hour. It seems incongruous to getting work done, but if you actually take a couple minute breaks on the hour, every hour, stand up, walk around, close your eyes, do whatever you need to do, you'll be more productive, your sleep will be better, everything will start to acclimate in your brain when you take those breaks. We are not meant as human beings to sit as long as we do.
All right, I want you to stop and I want you to feel where your shoulders are right now. Are they like this because you're hunched over? I know none of you listened and you're all still multitasking. So I want you to see where your shoulders are, right? My guess is they're kind of hunched over unless maybe somebody's standing, hopefully. What happens when we're hunched over is we actually, when we pull in, it's our DNA then says that we're protecting ourselves, we're in a fear zone, and it actually makes us more tired. And so if we can lift our shoulders up and actually look out at the horizon, it actually calms our sympathetic nervous system, and it actually makes us more hopeful for the future. Like just looking out, like I'm looking out our window at some of the buildings, even if it's not the best view.
And someone says they're standing.
Oh, yay! Oh, Mindy. Perfect.
And so the whole premise of being curious, because we can't be in two states at once. So when you're curious about something, you can't be fearful. And right now, all of our clients are experiencing a lot of fear and anxiety, more than we've ever experienced before. And they all are like, how do we fix this? We don't want to be in fear. We're trying to be hopeful and optimistic. And the thing is, you have to choose to be curious about the situation. And that allows your brain to search for answers. It allows you to actually override again your DNA and not be as fearful and anxious. So when we say choose curiosity, it has a lot of mental acuity benefits rather than just being curious.
And did you know that your brain can't hold fear and curiosity at the same time? That's the reason that if you can be curious. So instead of saying, oh, I'm scared about X, think about what could I be curious about, or what would be interesting to learn about. And then your brain can switch for you. All right, so we want to go over, we have hundreds of rules of the mind, but today we wanted to just share one with you, and it's our second one, and it is the brain seeks the familiar and it avoids the unknown.
And the problem with that right now is everything's unknown. We have no clear path forward. We have no rule book, no map. Everyone's sort of flying blind and trying to figure out this work at home. On top of that, our brain's going, this is not normal. Like when you put on your shoes in the morning, there's no hesitation. You've done it a million times. When you get your coffee, when you take a shower, all of these routines that we have in place, there's no hesitation. When we have that moment between action or between knowledge and action, our brain registers that as anxiety and fear. And it says, I need the familiar. Whatever that is, even if the familiar is not healthy for me, it's not productive for my team, it's not good for me as a leader, this is what it seeks. And so to be really mindful of how do we want to come out of these 3, 4, 6 months, we don't know how long this is going to last, how do we want to come out of it? If we realize that during this time, our brain wants us to go back to normal. It wants us to work at home like we worked at the office. And if we really want a new normal, a better culture, a better team environment, tighter team dynamics, better leadership capabilities, we have to be conscious that we have to seek that out daily. It will not happen on its own. The economy won't right itself and we'll go back to work and everything will be different. It's never going to happen unless you and I on this call today, we make an intentional commitment to change. What does that look like? If my brain is trying to protect me, it's going to not want me to think creatively. It's not going to want me to take risks. And we're saying you have to force yourself to get out of that habit of choosing safety.
I want you to kind of think about your office, what you're doing as a leader, because what I've seen from all the companies we work with is they kept their schedules exactly the same from what they were at the office to now everybody's at home. So now people are on Zoom all day long, and that's why we have the Zoom fatigue, and people are exhausted, and I know they want to just bang their heads against the wall if they have to be on Zoom one more time. So actually think through what needs to change, because like Susan said, our brain's going to seek the familiar, but what you need is, and because it avoids the unknown, and it's kind of scary to just go, my people are out there and I don't know what they're doing. Seek that unknown, seek what's different. That's how we're going to get innovative, and how we're going to repivot our businesses is if we aren't just doing exactly what we did at the office now on Zoom.
Curiosity allows us that space for clarity. So when Lori's saying, how do you want to show up? I don't mean a vague sense of it. I mean a really tight definition. Without clarity, there's no change. So if you don't know what you're changing and you're not clear on it, it doesn't matter the decisions that you make. I would venture to guess, we don't have really clear goals each week on what we're accomplishing. And if you can just take working at home and notch that clarity into weekly goals, and what weekly goals can you get to maintain a culture that you want, you're a lot more apt to get there with the clarity.
So the question for this rule is, what unknowns are you avoiding? And they could be anything from, we had one of our clients say, I'm just avoiding opening up my 401k statements and my financial statements, just because I don't want to know what they look like. And just avoiding, they're just piled there. And this was before COVID, they were just piled there. So what are you avoiding? Are you avoiding saying, hey, we've got to really think through our business, what can we do differently? Are you avoiding maybe, we're not going to have 20 people on Zoom every day for 4 hours, and we're going to choose a different way to work. I'm going to empower my people.
It could be as simple as, what are you not saying that you really want to? So if you're not saying what you believe to be true and helpful, why is that? And really looking at the clarity for yourself, what could allow you to do that?
And get curious, because I think when we are avoiding the unknowns, it's because of that fear, right? So get curious. What could that look like? What might you do? Who could help you? You could partner with someone.
And be curious about the constraints. Are they real or imagined? Oftentimes we tell ourselves we can't because of X, and X isn't a real constraint. So be really curious and mindful on is there even anything holding you back, or is it just your fear of what will, the judgment, the shame, embarrassment, if you do something that isn't received well.
All right, so our goal today is that we know that it's unsettling. We know it's scary. Being an owner, being a leader, you have the weight of the world on you. Not only is it your family, but you're also providing for other families. And I know that is super stressful, but your job is to provide hope and stability. And some of the ways to do that is to override these protective mechanisms that our brain gives us. And so be curious, model great behavior, encourage your people to get better sleep, hydration, eat well, and move throughout the day.
And use your biology for you, not against you. Understand that your brain is going to seek familiar, sane, no stress. You're not doing anything wrong. It's your brain trying to protect you.
And remember, you can survive or you can thrive, and it's up to us, and it's our choice. All right. Thank you for joining us. Ray, I think it's going to turn over to you.
Yeah, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. Some great nuggets. I've been writing feverishly while you were talking. So now, Lorraine, Susan, this is one step of, you talked about the rules of the mind. There are how many rules of the mind that you cover? Because this is part of a very small part of a much bigger.
It is. We focus on 10 of them, but all the training and coaching we do revolves around neurobiology. So every training we do backs up to a brain rule to override. So it makes it a more tactile approach.
Our goal is in a company, you can't get that culture change or that initiative change unless individually we know what's causing that. So we work with groups, but focusing on that individual within the group, to each one, that it's our choice. We get to choose on how we want to show up. Okay,
great. And then one last question on that is, if somebody was interested in this, they're like, wow, that's kind of interesting. It's really quick and there's a lot here. What's your process for that? Do you have like workshops, or is it just best that they just reach out to you directly and have that conversation?
All of it's on our website, thinkconsilio.com, and I'm sure that's in the notes. But yeah, we train executives, individuals, teams. We kind of like to do a whole culture strategy. So we do top down, bottom up. So we have more of an organic integration of movement of a culture.
Okay.
And then
Perfect.
we are flexible with teams. Like we might get in and then find, oh, that's not quite the problem that we thought or what you thought, and we adjust, and we're flexible with where they want to take their culture and what we think they need, and they think.
Okay. Great. Well, that's fantastic. I appreciate you sharing.
Yeah.
So
Thanks for the questions.
yeah, and if we have other questions, please put those in the chat or in the Q&A. Let's make sure we address those at the end in our Q&A session. So
Perfect.
all right. So Ray, let's switch gears and chat with you. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about what you do at PepperShock. Now, for those of you that don't know, PepperShock, and I don't know how you wouldn't know, because Ray's like on every social media platform and anywhere there's people, I think Ray's there. So, but PepperShock is a marketing and advertising agency, and I like your little tagline of how you serve from Fortune none to Fortune 500 or whatever all around the world. So really that ability to work with the solopreneur and people that are just getting started, as well as large organizations, and being that fractional chief marketing officer. So that's great. And so I'd love for you to share a little bit about what how you can leverage culture and branding to really help drive continuity with your clients and with your employees and that type of thing. So.
Okay, well, thank you first of all for having me, and second of all, we've used Consilio at PepperShock before, so they've been really helpful in doing strength finders and all kinds of fun stuff. But let me just get this going, and I will answer some of those questions and see if I can't give you a little bit of insight, some information, maybe some inspiration to take back to your teams and or employers if you are an employee versus the leader of the employees. So. Let's just get into it. We know that happy campers make happy customers. And I'll admit that when I first started this business, I was young. So 17 years ago, almost 17 years ago. And I had it flipped around. Customer always comes first. And then maybe I'll take care of my employees. Once I realized that I needed to very much so take care of my employees first, so then my customers would be taken care of. So at some point there were lots of things that occurred in the company, lots of different time frames of, recession and all of those types of things, right? But when it comes to a point where you need to make sure that you're in alignment with the people that you're working with and that your culture is very important in order for the company to survive and sustain for as long as we have. So I'm going to share a few things about what we do and how we do it. Maybe some lessons I've learned along the way in that regard. And I'm going to make sure my chat is shown here. Oh, thank you. Okay, so yeah, it's basically really taking care of your people, right? And that's the idea. Culture and branding start from the inside out. And so your culture is your brand is your culture. And really it's how you take care of your culture then exudes how your brand will then be determined in your marketplace or in where you're at. But first of all, let's start with a little activity. Just get us warmed up. This is what we do in our daily huddles. And most of us are still working from home or a combination of both, depending on where we're at and what we're doing. And if they have little kids at home that couldn't go to baby, it doesn't matter. So I start off with the first question, and I want you guys to participate with me. So get your fingers ready. Here we go. How are you feeling with one word? How are you feeling right now? Type in your one word of the day. How do you feel right now? Go ahead. Let's see it in the chat. See if anyone's paying attention. Energized, excited, good. What else we got? How are you feeling right now? And I usually make people take, we go around because we're where we can see everybody's faces. They're telling us how they're feeling. Feeling good. Tracy's feeling good. Resilient. Good. Good. What else do we got here? Okay. So this is just an activity to get people kind of in the mindset of how they feel, what's going on. And if there's anything to be alarmed with, right? Maybe somebody's saying, I'm tired, or I'm, exhausted, or, things to pay attention, things to hone in on with your team. What's going on? Why are you feeling that way? How can we help? And that might be a sideline conversation that you take off, in a huddle, right? You take it off to the sidelines if you need to pull your team member out just a minute and have a powwow with them, right? So this is something to think about. Other things that we've discovered while playing virtually, just to kind of just give you a short little thing. I found this, it's like a what to do under quarantine, and you can actually modify this wheel. It's wheeldecide.com. So I've had some fun with coming up with different things that you can spin and do. I just wanted to share this with you because you can modify it and do it, but click to spin. Just a fun little thing, get people's minds going, what they can do. Hey, we can all work on an art project, but like I said, you can change all these different things. Just a little tool for you to do in trying to engage your team and getting them thinking about what's going on. Because in our space, it's very creative, right? We always have to have our creative muscle going. And so we need to continue to think about how we can engage, how we can keep our company culture alive, even in a quarantine. But what is company culture? It's the personality of your company. It's your mission, it's your values, your mantra, your SMART goals, your specific, measurable, attainable, relatable, time-based, ethical, and recorded, so that it can become smarter goals. And ethics, expectations, environment, all of those things that create your culture. And by the way, you may or may not know this, but your culture will be created whether you want it to be or not. And now you just have to see how you can guide culture. And if you don't, your staff members will. And sometimes it's not always a great culture unless you're there taking care of it. And like Concilio said, like Lori and Susan said, you have to think about the mindset that you want to have and be. What is branding? So company brand is the experience of the company, determined by reputation and look and feel, the buy. And it's not just your logo, but it is the logo too. It's all of those things that symbolize, right? Some very symbolic of what you represent and what your company represents and what your employees represent as your company. It's word of mouth accelerated, right? Everyone knows that word of mouth advertising is the best way to advertise your company, good or bad, right? Reviews, recommendations, rankings, ratings, 5-star reviews, all of those things can really be very helpful. So those help accelerate word of mouth. And when you're looking to hire employees, look at those things, right? And so, yeah, employee branding versus employer branding, and what your employees and how they brand your company, because they're the ones who are working with your customers. And so those people have to be in alignment, which we say fun, fame, or fortune. Are the new customers that we're going to work with, are they in alignment with us? And we say we have to at least pick 2, fun, fame, or fortune, right? Is it going to be fun? Is it something that we want to work on? Is it going to be, is it going to cause us stress and strife and exhaustion, or is it going to be something truly that we want to do? Fame, is it something that's going to be out there that people will talk about and then help us build our brand because of something really cool that we're working on? And fortune, are we going to make any money? Are we going to be profitable? And maybe it's something that we're doing for a nonprofit that we're not going to make any money, but maybe it's fun, and maybe we're going to get brand recognition for doing it, that kind of thing. Same thing with better, faster, cheaper. These are, they can affect your brand in a very, very negative or positive way. Same thing with your employees who are working for you. So you can only pick 2. You can't have it all. You can't have better, faster, cheaper in most cases. If you want it better, it's going to maybe be longer. It'll take longer. If you want it faster, it won't be better. And if you want it cheaper, it's definitely maybe not going to be better, because you're you get what you pay for, right? Yeah. What is brand without great culture? Thank you, Jason. It's true. Culture is massive. Absolutely. So I'm going to give you 5 ways to build your brand through your culture. And I did send out a handout, so Brent will get that to you later for the ebook that they're doing. But number 1, it's easy. Social media. Employees give 10 times more connections than their companies have followers. So when an employee shares your social media, you're going to get 10 times more people seeing that than you will on your own company brand. Why? Because people look at what your employees are doing. And if you post a picture of you and your employees, it's going to get way more engagement, way more interaction than if you just post a picture of a rock or something that doesn't, or no picture, only text at all. So only 2% of employees share content that their company has shared on LinkedIn, yet responsible for 20% of overall engagement. The clicks, likes, comments, shares. The shareholders has a new meaning. The shareholders are your employees now, because they can share your content and you get more value out of it. So those are ways to build your brand and build your culture. Talk about the things that you're doing with your employees. Talk about, the wheel decisions that you're making, the huddles that you're having. Talk about all of the different things that you're doing with your staff, because people love that. People want to see other people. They engage with other people. So that's definitely a thing. So we always have our Shocktoberfest every year. It's our anniversary party, customer appreciation party, employee appreciation party. And so these are always things that get well liked and engaged, and people dress up and they come every year to the party. This year it's supposed to be on 5, 10, 15, 20. So at 5 o'clock on October 15th, 2020. Anyway, I thought that was kind of clever, 5, 10, 15, 20. Number 2, employee brand versus employer brand. Employment brand is to recruiting what marketing is to sales. So if you're recruiting and you want to build a great place to work, and perception is reality, right? Your employees are going to tell all about you on Glassdoor and all those different review sites for the company. Make it what you want it to be. Make that company appear and be what you want it to be with your culture, right? People trust the authenticity of their peers and their network. So they're going to look at what those reviews are, and they're going to see how you are navigating your people, how you're taking care of your people, right? And reputation of being a great place to work really, really matters. And I had to learn the hard way, I won't lie. There's early on when I was young and not really understanding the way of the world at the time, I was very different than I am now, and I have learned a lot. And one of the things that I think can really, really transition or kind of take you from being a startup to then maybe the next step, maybe a teenager in your company, is recognizing that your employees have to come first. They absolutely have to come first. Now, I'm not saying that the customer is always right. That's you can't always just believe that, but what you have to do is make sure that your employees have the empowerment and the engagement, and they understand that they have the ability to make it right with the customers, and that your employees can be trusted to do that, right? The 5 dysfunctions of a team, one of them is trust and accountability, of course, but trust is a huge thing. Operating at the speed of trust is very, very real. So some employee engagement pointers: make branding voluntary, but find buy-in, right? We want them to help support the company, talk about the company. And what are they saying when you're not there? What are they saying when you're not there as a leader? Is it good? Is it bad? There once upon a time was when I was young, it was not good. And, I literally had somebody say, "Oh, don't get the wrath of Ray." Yeah, that was kind of an eye-opener. I don't want to be known as somebody that's going to bring on the wrath, right? I want to be known as somebody who can coach them up and engage and just really help them. So being supportive and really turning on your empathy skills. My empathy skills were not great when we started this whole company, because I was more about just trying to get to where we needed to go without empathizing and putting my feet in their shoes, right? So I've come a long way that way. Celebrate successes, right? Don't always just harp on them for all the things that they may do wrong. You got to celebrate those successes along the way. Hear the frustrations. So BMWs, bitching, moaning, and whining. Allow it. Let them do it, because that's where you can get better at what's going on, and ask them for feedback. Get that from them. And then turn around and provide timely feedback too, just the same, And my friend Ron Price always says, don't deny, blame, or defend. Just say thank you when you ask for feedback, right? Don't defend, deny, or blame. Just say thank you. I love that. Setting your smarter goals. We have a big, huge board in our break room that has our smarter goals. They're very, very specific. We have accountability partners, dates to set, and we review those often to see how we're doing and what we're doing. Utilizing non-monetary incentives. These are important as well. Making sure that we can help get people motivated to do the things that they do. And not everybody, especially in the creative world, is motivated by money. I mean, trying to get them to put their timesheets and do the time entries so they can get paid is like sometimes pulling teeth. I'm like, don't you understand? That's how you get paid. If you don't put your time in, you don't get paid. And sometimes they don't care. So you have to find other ways to motivate them and do things. Playing to their strengths. And this is where Concilio came in for us, and we did the strength finders, and we really helped uncover our strengths. And so being able to utilize the strengths of our people, not just with like their skill set, right, but also their brain space and how they are, right, if they're organized or if they're accountable. By the way, my number one strength is command, not demand. Right? And woo. So I'm going to woo you and I'm going to command you. So I guess I have a counterbalance there. And also includer in communication and ideation, not in that particular order, but Strength Finders is pretty awesome. If you've never done it, Concilio can help you with that too. Coach them up, teach them to fish. I say this all the time with my senior staff and my junior staff. If you teach a man to fish, he will eat for life. But if you just feed him a fish, he'll eat for a day, right? You want to teach him to fish, teach them, coach them, do that. Technology and tools, make sure you're always up to date on what you can do for them. I always ask, do you have all the tools that you need? What, if you could have anything in the world, what could you possibly want? A standing desk, what is it that you need, right? And a screen protector or whatever. Tell me what you need. How can I help? And then of course, care, compassion, empathy, and understanding. We talked about that. And that is very critical. We're all humans, so we have to be able to understand, especially now during this COVID crisis mode, right? One of my employees have two little kids at home, and she's homeschooling and she's doing all these things and managing projects. It's like, how can we help? I literally delivered her a bottle of wine one day when I knew that she just needed a moment. I don't care. It takes whatever it takes, right? And she lives clear on the other side of the world for me, but that was one thing I could just notice, that she needed something. Just something, right? Just working with our staff. This is pre-COVID, but one of the things that we did is we took an axe and we threw it out of I don't know if you can see the picture very well, but there's sticky notes all over it of all the things. We have wins and losses that we do every year. So all the wins we put up on sticky notes, and all the losses of things that, maybe didn't quite go right, or we lost a client for whatever reason, or we, made a mistake. It happens, right? Maybe we didn't proof something. The number one common thing that people do is you and your. They forget the R on your. It happens. Anyway, so all the losses, we threw an axe at it and then we burned them. And I don't know if you can see that in the upper right-hand corner. There's a trash can and we're burning our losses for last year. And while we were doing our powwow, we always have a mini powwow in January, and then our big, huge camping extravaganza powwow in August. Well, we'll see. This year we're going to probably just stay around and not do the big thing that we normally do just because of the coronavirus. But anyway, because of Rona. Couple things, and I know I need to wrap up here soon, but 61% of employees agree that they have made healthier lifestyle choices because of their company's wellness program. Companies with happy employees outperform the competition by 20%. And happy employees are 12% more productive. You want some more? Get it? Ready? Here's some more. High engagement results in 28% increase in earnings growth. That's a lot, especially right now when we all need to earn more. So if we can get our people to engage, if we can get them to do the things that we need them to do because they want to do it, they're motivated correctly, you're finding what they're motivated about. One of the things in my coaching sessions I always ask them is, and it changes, what are some things that we can do? What are your favorite things that if we want to reward you, what would it look like? Coffee shop, movie tickets, a good book, what is it that we can reward you with? And so I always try to do that because I want to make sure that people are motivated by what interests them and how they can feel good about what they're doing. Just a couple little things here, culture book, and I had to kind of redact some of my slides, so just keep that in mind. But we have a culture book. It's our Pepper Shock way. It's a standard operating procedures, but that sounded so much more boring than culture book in the Pepper Shock way. But we also have social media policies because we talked about how social media is a way to help build your brand through your employees and your culture, and setting what those expectations look like. And then proof. I always have a rule, 2 sets of eyes on everything that goes out the door, not including your own set of eyes. So 2 sets of eyes on everything that goes out the door, not your own set. Most especially in an expedited situation. And why? That's when most mistakes are made. True story. Okay, so 5 ways. Number 3, building a stellar brand. We'll kind of go through this quickly, but blueprints and brands, in order to have a building built, you have to have a foundation. Just like you go to an architect for the blueprints, you go to a marketing consultant maybe, or working with your team or your director, marketing director, to figure out what that is. What's the foundation? What do you want your brand to stand for? What do you want your culture to stand for? And how do they work together? What's your brand essence and your voice, your brand values, your goals, or a PEO, professional employee organization like Jason at BBSI. Strategy and tactics, and how to put those together, and how it combines with your marketing plan, how it all integrates with what your strategy is for the overall company, what your growth is all over together. And I always say, measure what you treasure, dump what you don't, automate what you hate. So measure what you treasure. There's ways to do that. People tell me all the time, well, how do you measure branding? Well, there's ways to do it. There really, really is. And you go against what your goals are to build that brand, and how you can recognize what you want to track and what you want to set your goals to do. And the ways that we do it, and I'll have to get into this another time. If you're interested, let me know. We'll put our links in there. But measuring your lifetime value and customer acquisition costs is one way to do it overall to help you in building a stellar brand. Okay, number 4, provide relevant, shareable content. Find scalable ways to enable your staff and your clients to quickly and easily share brand appropriate content across all of their social networks. Give them something to talk about. And then also things that you can have your employees talk about is gameplay. It is the number one way for people to be able to innovate and encourage and get engagement is through games and activity. And the point of this is, oh, you're just spending non-billable time doing games. No, really, what we're doing is we're building a team. We're building our culture. We're doing things that are memorable and shareable, and ways that people like to engage with us. Because again, it's not always about the money, right? It's about the experience that people have. So there's some games there. There is a template on Jeopardy, or like a Jeopardy template that we do, and I put tidbits and like facts about our company, and they have to answer it in the form of a question. And then we have Family Feud. It's always fun, like office setting. What are the number one ways an employee can get fired, and then like you list off like Family Feud, or and you do it both ways, like positive too. And just answer questions. So like right now, because we're virtual, if you could be anywhere, where would you be? Give us a tour guide. This has been fun, like, showing everybody's houses and like what's on their desk at home. And again, just doing different ideas, the things that you can do. We did some escape rooms. We did the career trading cards. Some of these things you can't quite do right now until we're off the beaten path here. Okay, so I'm just going to keep going. This is us camping with our staff. And then number 5, employee wellness program. We talked about goals and motivation and getting people involved. Okay, so another thing that really people love is 67% of full-time employees with access to free food at work are extremely or very happy at their current job. So true. Okay, I'm just going to keep going. Unhappy employees take 15 more sick days than average employees. And we have to be super flexible. This is really, really crazy. 80 to 90% of working Americans would like to work remotely, at least part-time. 68% said that they expect to work remotely instead of commute to an office every day. That's changing, especially now with virtual and being able to work from home. 27% of employees change jobs every year, 17% are actively job hunting, and 46% are passively looking. So you got to do things to keep your employees engaged, happy, and building your culture. Love your job, love where you work and who you work with, and let the good times roll. And I think I did my time. I'll just keep going. I'll drop some links in the chat, and we'll go from there. So there you go. To you, Brent.
Great. That's awesome. And I know there's tons of information to share. So it's very difficult for each of these panelists. They have so much content. It's great content, and it's so hard to kind of cram it down in there and actually compress it into just 15, 20 minutes. So thanks for that, Ray. I appreciate that. And also, this is, correct me if I'm wrong, Ray, this is part of a much bigger brand camp that you do, correct? So that's a great tool. Other people have taken advantage of that. I know that really can take your business to a whole new level. So I really encourage everybody to reach out to Ray as well, and really see how that can.
Links in there for everyone. So there you go. Thank you.
Perfect. And we'll also have the ebook, so we'll have Ray's contact information there as well. But make sure you grab the chat, and if you're watching the replay, then you're not going to see the chat, but you can get that information on the ebook. So, all right. Well, let's shift gears to Cheryl, and thanks again, Ray. So Cheryl is a partner with Rectify Partners, and Rectify Partners works with organizations that are in need of a number of different services. So it may be turnaround services, it may be help with temporary sea level services, and that type of thing. Cheryl specializes in the CFO seat and does a lot with the financial side of the business, but also does a ton in terms of working with the employees and the culture and that type of thing in the company as well. And so Cheryl is also the co-host of Weathering the Storm and does a lot of the behind the scenes work as well. So Cheryl, I'll let you take it from here, and thanks for presenting.
Perfect. Thanks. Some great information that we received this morning. Thank you, Lori and Susan and Ray, for all the great information that you guys.
Oh, I think we.
So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. One of the things I'm going to share today is we all have heard what our intellectual IQ is, but today we're going to talk about, if I can get this to work here, second. Today we're going to share what our emotional intelligence is. So if everybody can take a piece of paper out and a pen, because we're going to take a small sample of an emotional intelligence test at the end, so we can all rate ourselves. So one of the things that makes a good leader is also having the emotional intelligence. And it's scientifically proven method for developing skills for success. And it's rated that you will make more money as well as scale in an organization if you have emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize and understand emotions in yourself and in others, and your ability to use the awareness to manage your behavior and your relationships. And the 4 aspects of emotional intelligence is self-awareness, making sure that you're aware of yourself, your emotions, how you're coming across. Also adaptability. It's really important as a leader is to be able to be adaptable and flexible to no matter what environment that you're in. Also resilience. Being a leader and having resilience is so important. And then your social awareness, how others are seeing you, how you can adapt in a social environment. So going into a little bit deeper of self-awareness, it is the ability to perceive your emotions at the moment and understand your tendencies across situations. It is good to understand yourself, the good and the bad. It's really important as a leader to understand what triggers us and making sure that we are not taking it out on our teammates, our customers, and those around us. That adaptability piece, the ability to adjust your thoughts, your feelings, and your behaviors in any unpredictable or changing conditions. So one of the things you can ask yourself, am I willing to compromise my principles of values? Where's my focus and where's my mindset, like what Lori and Susan talked about earlier? Being resilient. Being resilient is the ability to bounce back from setbacks and failure, to find a silver lining and to see a hopeful future, especially right now in the economy and what's going on in our community and in the right now. Being able to be resilient and bounce back and learn from what those things are around us in those situations. And so emotional intelligence has a lot of different components. It helps to increase your team's performance, improves your decision making, increases your personal well-being, reduces your staff turnover, increases your leadership ability, and it decreases this overall stress. All right, so if everybody wants to take a piece of paper, get your piece of paper and your pen, and we're going to go through 20 questions. So as I read through these, what I'd like to do is, if it does not apply to you, write a 1. If it applies half of the time, then I want you to write a 3. And if it's always, I want you to write a 5. So the first question, and then we'll total it at the end. I realize immediately when I lose my temper. Is that it does not apply, applies sometimes, or always applies? Am I able to always motivate myself to do difficult tasks? 1, 3, and 5. Am I always able to see things from the other person's viewpoint? Sometimes that's very difficult to do in any situation. Number 4 is I am an excellent listener. Number 5, I know when I am happy. Number 6, I'm always able to prioritize important activities at work and get on with them. Number 7, I am excellent at empathizing with someone else's problems. Number 8, I never interrupt other people's conversations. Sometimes that's a difficult one to do. I find myself having that once in a while. Number 9, I usually recognize when I am stressed. Number 10, others can rarely tell what kind of mood I am in. 1, 3, or 5. Number 11, I can tell if someone is not happy with me. Number 12, when I am being emotional, I am aware of this. Number 13, I rarely fly off the handle at other people. Number 14, I can understand why my actions sometimes offend others. 1, 3, or 5. Number 15, I never waste time. I think we all probably have had that once or twice, especially with all the social media sites nowadays. And we find that we, at least sometimes I do, consume myself and go, wow, an hour just went by, I didn't even realize it. Number 16, I do not let stressful situations or people affect me once I have left work. Number 17, I can tell if a team of people are not getting along with each other. Number 18, people are the most interesting thing in life for me. 1, 3, or 5. When I feel anxious, I usually can account for the reasons. And the last question, difficult people do not annoy me. All right, so I will give you guys a few minutes. So what you're gonna go ahead and do is you're gonna record your scores to all of the questions, and you're gonna calculate in those areas. So you're going to have each total from each of the columns. You'll total down at the bottom. So if you have a 32 to 47, this area is a strength for you. If you have a score of 16 to 35, or 31, excuse me, that needs a little bit of attention. You will find some weaknesses that you'll probably want to potentially work on. And then 1 to 15, if your score is, this area is a development priority. So I'll give everybody a few minutes to go ahead and tally up your results. There's lots of resources like we've heard today of different options and working with different agencies out there. There's also several books that you can read. There's an Emotional Intelligence 2.0, and there's a lot lengthier tests that you can take. There's also free PDFs on websites that you can also utilize to go into deeper dives into this. I think it's really important as well as a leader is to give this to your team members. Look at what kind of their strengths are, as well as areas where you guys can work as a team on some of the weaknesses, kind of similar stuff that Ray talked about, is really bringing that team together to feel comfortable in the work environment, as well as working on those soft skills. I think it's really important as a leader to not only help and mentor on the skill sets and the intellectual IQ, but it's also really important as an organization, building your brand and your culture within your organization, as from a leadership standpoint, as well as an ownership standpoint, is having that emotional intelligence and being able to be empathetic to your employees, to your staff members, to your coworkers, as well as being able to adapt to any environment or any situation, whether it's an internal or an external situation, knowing kind of where your strengths are and where those development and developing and continuing to develop those soft skills. So does anybody want to share any insight or anything? You can add it to the chat if you want to, or raise your hand. Anybody wants to share kind of what some of their strengths or something that needs attention?
And we can also open up the unmute if you want to talk. So just raise your hand on the chat or in the raise your hand by your name and we can unmute you, but we'll go ahead and keep moving on as well. So we can also talk in the chat here coming up. So
yep. So I want to just end this with a quote. Anyone can be angry. That's easy. But to be angry with the right person to the right degree at the right time for the right purpose and in the right way, that is not as easy. And that's where emotional intelligence comes in. So thank you.
great, thanks, Cheryl. So that's the emotional intelligence aspect is such an important piece, and I know Lori and Susan, as well as Mindy, who's coming up, deals a lot with this as well. And when you get that right, and when you get the emotional intelligence figured out, and you can really improve yourself in those areas, it really makes a huge difference to your business and your life overall. So that's fantastic. So thank you for that. All right, well, Mindy, let's have you join, and we will switch gears to you now. Mindy has first of all, Mindy is the Chief Motivational Officer and founder of Maximize Solutions Consulting and Coaching. Mindy has a great story, though. She is in the Air Guard, I believe, correct?
Yes,
All
sir.
right. And so she works in the human resources aspect of the Guard and works in that environment, which is completely different or very different from the civilian side of things. But she's also works a lot in the civilian side as well. But she brings that expertise and those interesting stories and interesting challenges from the military side into the civilian world. So I wanted to have you share. We've got about 15 minutes. I'd like you to share kind of your perspective on how to help this engagement and kind of dovetail off of what we've been talking about today to really help leaders be able to be more effective with their teams. So, Mindy, it's yours.
Awesome. Thank you, Brent. Yeah, so as Brent mentioned, I am the Human Resource Advisor with the Idaho Air National Guard, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that role that I have and what I've been doing with the Air National Guard over the last couple of months. So I loved how Cheryl talked about emotional intelligence and how it's so important, and it's really the foundation of everything. I saw race statistics, and absolutely high-level leaders and leaders that go places have they have a high emotional intelligence, and so. And I loved where we talked about empathy too as well. And that's really what I wanted to talk about a little bit more, is that human connection. So, a couple of months ago, you might have saw on the news with the Idaho Air National Guard that we deployed. We deployed almost half of our force into hot zones, combat zones, center A-10s overseas to support the active duty force, something that has been unique and different for the Air National Guard that we haven't really done in the past. This is our second time being on a rotation, but we typically usually are a stateside mission. And so that's our first and foremost, that's our priority as the Air National Guard, is to support the state with fires, disasters. We do exercises with tsunamis that may happen on the West Coast that may potentially affect Idaho. And so, we've been doing some deployments over the last couple of years. So we're gearing up for our deployment that was already planned. It wasn't anything different. And we started gearing up our resiliency efforts too as well. And then the pandemic hit. So then we started focusing on the pandemic and how we were going to work around, navigate, how we were going to get people out of the country to go replace people that have already been there for 6 months. They're ready to come home to their families. Our people have already put their lives on hold. They had plans. They were committed over the next couple of months to deploy and be gone for birthdays and celebrations and graduations and, you name it. They were getting ready to put their lives on hold, but the pandemic kind of started to shift how they were going to get out the door. What does that look like? Do we have to quarantine? And so we did really well at trying to navigate all of those factors. And we decided in June that we were going to come back to our drill weekend and we were going to assemble. We felt that it was safe enough to do that. We had, of course, a lot of practices in place. We did things a lot differently over drill, but my role as the human resource advisor is I focus on organizational development learning. So the wing commander said, Mindy, how do we pulse check people? We've been through a lot over the last couple of months. How do we make sure everybody's okay? And then, that week before leading up to our drill weekend in June, everything had happened with the George Floyd case out of Minneapolis. And so we had 3 wars essentially that we were fighting going into drill weekend. We had the war on terrorism. We also had the war on the pandemic. We had been preparing and looking at our resources, making sure we can support manpower, hospital tents, whatever we needed to provide to the state if we were activated. And then we were called upon to send out 400 Army soldiers to the Washington, D.C. monuments. And so you might have saw about a month ago, a lot of really big planes. There were cargo planes coming in and they were picking up our Army folks, all their artillery, their Humvees, just their equipment. When you send the Army out, they go with a lot of stuff. So the Air Force is typically the ones to give them the ride. So that happened right before a weekend. So we had 3 wars happening really at the same time. We added the third, the war on humanity and how we could support and defend, but that's not anything different for the military because, a lot of what you hear with people is this is what I signed up for. This is what I've committed to. I decided that I was going to make this sacrifice regardless of what came at me. And so going into the weekend, we were trying to figure out how can we pulse check people and just figure out how they're feeling and how they're doing. And that's when we started to talk about we really need to hone in on our human connection and really need to focus on our empathy and really need to have more conversations focused around how people are doing and asking them those questions that they probably wouldn't think that we would ask them. Because, nobody really wants to talk about emotions. Emotions are scary. People typically want to run the other way. And, one of the components with emotional intelligence, and I know Cheryl had mentioned reading that book, Emotional Intelligence 2.0 by Dr. Bradbury and Jean Graves, which I highly recommend because that's something the Air National Guard has adopted over the last 2 years. Is we adopted emotional intelligence assessments through Talent Smart, and we deliver 8-hour courses, and we do continuous follow-up coaching and ensuring that people are going through an emotional intelligence journey. And that's when my wing commander said, the first thing that we need to do now that we're opening back up is we need to have an emotional intelligence class. And I had 30 leaders that were asking to be in. I actually had to turn some people away at that moment when we put that out there. And, I even had one of our top generals out at Gowan Field that said, I need to have this class. I need to get an assessment completed, and I need to make sure that I am at the top of my game over the next 6 months, because we're not done. We're not done with the war on terrorism. We have people that are still going to be rolling out. As a matter of fact, I have a very good friend that a week ago, she was told she was going to be leaving in 6 days, and she wasn't slotted to leave until the middle of July, almost end of July. So things are rapidly changing at our base, and we're trying to get, our people out the door. And so we have a lot of leaders that are asking, like, how can I be more connected with the people? Because right now I need to be more connected. And I loved what somebody had mentioned earlier about being lonely. I think it was Brent in the beginning. It's lonely as a leader. It's lonely at the top. You hear that a lot, and it really doesn't have to be. And so when we did our emotional intelligence class last week with the executive leaders at Gowan Field, we talked a lot about how there's a power in human connection. I don't know if you've ever read the book by Cody Bateman, The Power of Human Connection. I love that book. I love that book before anything was even happening in our country, and it still resonates a lot. And if now it is more important, definitely, is being able to relate and connect with people. And really, if you read that book, it's not any different than what you would do for face-to-face. It's just the means in which you connect and you reach out to people. And so when we met with our class, that's a lot of what we talked about, is human connection. How do we connect with people? And how do we make sure that there's not a gap between us as higher level leaders and our people that are serving and actually doing the work round the clock, and whose families and lives we're disrupting by asking them to be on standby and then not be on standby and then be ready and then don't be ready. How do we make sure that we're connecting with them? And as I started polling the leaders, I started asking them, how do you connect with your people? And they, I got a couple of, well, we ask them how they're doing. Okay, you ask them how they're doing, but how are you asking those questions? Are we using close-ended questions, or are we using open-ended questions? Because you're going to get a lot different of a response when you use an open-ended question. Now, as a high-level leader, you're probably not going to get the response, that you want to hear, which is, I have these things that I need to work on, or I have this happening, or I have this struggle, because a lot of times, our people don't want to speak directly to the higher level leaders. However, what can happen, and a domino effect can happen, is if they see how much you care, they will turn and they will talk to other people within their organization if they're struggling. And so we talked a lot about that human connection and how you have those conversations with people, and how it doesn't have to be lonely at the top. Only you can make it lonely at the top. And keep in mind that there is going to be a different form of disconnect from the bottom to the top. Yes, there is that. But there are ways that you can tackle that, and you can start to see a change and see a difference. Now, over the last couple of months, we've pivoted in a lot of different directions. We've gone remotely. And I don't know what that looks like for you. I don't know how you reach out and have a conversation with somebody, or how you have dialogue, or how you communicate and be transparent. How do you support your people that are on your team as well to then have open-ended questions? How are you coaching them? How are you helping them through just creating that human connection that needs to still be there? And if not, it's just very much more important now than it has ever been, is to have that human connection. So I loved what Ray said. She said, measure what you treasure. What do you treasure? Relationships is typically the area that we tend to score lowest on. When I do assessments with my teams at Gowan Field and also with clients within the community, a lot of times people tend to score lowest in relationship management. And the reason is because it takes time, it takes work, you have to be intentional, and it can be scary too, because sometimes you don't want to ask those questions, you're not really sure how to respond, right? So relationships is something that we tend to do poorly on when it comes to our emotional intelligence, because they take a lot of time and energy. But measure what you treasure. How are you measuring what you treasure within your organizations, the people? How do you show them appreciation? How do you connect with them, even if it's connecting with them something that, it doesn't interest you, and it's not something that you really care to talk about, but it's important to them, right? So it's so important to have that human connection on the forefront of the way we lead as leaders in today's environment. And emotional intelligence, what I found most from the feedback that I received from the leaders, is that this is something that not a lot of people focus on, because they think because it's got the word emotion in it. And so a lot of times will get leaders that will sign up for the course, they'll take the assessment, and they'll come in for the 8-hour class. And then they'll say, I'm not really sure if I need this, but I feel like I might. And then at the end of the day, I have top leaders, CEOs, saying, I could have used this 10 years ago, and this would have saved me a lot of heartache had I really just paid attention to my emotional intelligence. So with that, I just wanted to leave you with a little bit of, my perspective. I think, in the military, we have a command structure. And so we a lot of times are, follow orders, follow command. But in times like these, even the military and commanders are asking, and they're looking, and they're seeking out ways where they can support their team members and support resiliency and help people be agile and help people come out of everything that we're facing and just be a much stronger leader. And so with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Brent.
Great. That was awesome. So I appreciate you sharing, and it's interesting. You think about the military is, and we're going to jump into Q&A. So all the other panelists, if you can go ahead and turn your mics and videos back on, we'll have our questions. If you have questions, put them in the chat, or we're going to raise your hand and we'll turn your mic on so you can ask your question. But Mindy, I would think, like in the military, that's kind of the environment you would expect people to be tough and kind of John Wayne-ish. Well, maybe that's not appropriate now, I guess. John Wayne's the bad guy, but you would think that would be the place where people wouldn't want to share, and yet, it's important. So, can you share a little bit about, or give some additional tips on, how to break into that? Because I know leaders at the high level really are insulated from a lot of the things that are going on down deeper in the organization. And so, what can they be doing? What kind of questions can they be asking to help spark some conversation, some good conversation?
Well, I think a lot of what human connection starts with, and building that rapport and that relationship with people, is talking about something that's not related to work. Maybe talking about something that they have a hobby I had a commander one time that he was very quiet, very reserved, very shy. But the moment that you started talking about boats and sailing, it was a completely different feel. He was excited. He wanted to talk about it. And so when I saw that with a high level leader, I started using that, with everybody that I work with, talking about something that's not related to work, because that's where you really start to build that human connection with people. Even if it's not something that interests you, it shows that you care.
Mm-hmm. No, that's good. I like that. While we're waiting for some other questions, if we get any more, Lori or Susan, I'll let you fight it out of who gets to answer this one, I suppose. But you talked about sleep and how, the importance of that. I thought that was excellent. And it wasn't really the quantity of sleep, it was the quality of sleep. Do you have any suggestions, or where would you point somebody if I'm saying, hey, I'm not getting good sleep. I'd love to have good sleep. I just can't turn that on, right? What can I do to help get better sleep? You have.
I will say I have a hard time sleeping and going to sleep, staying asleep. And so Susan challenged me last year to do this one thing. It's actually maybe more than one, and it has helped tremendously. So the first one is, a lot of us like wake up and the first thing we do is grab our iPads, grab our phones, turn on the TV, and our brains are actually made to export knowledge, not do more input, but the first thing we're doing is inputting. And so if you get up and you take a 20-minute walk first, it resets your circadian rhythms. And then if you won't check your phone or any technology for that first hour, it actually lets our brain reset so that that night we can sleep better. And after about 3 or 4 days, it just took a few days, I actually was sleeping so much better. And then I got out of the habit a few months ago, and my sleep went kind of wonky again. So that was your tip.
And I would say, if you say I don't have even 20 minutes for a walk, what we found is 2 to 10 minutes. If you can just go outside the first thing in the morning with your coffee, your tea, in the sunlight, not through a window, and just, if it's a bright day, you only need 2 minutes. If it's overcast and cloudy, then maybe 10, but 2 to 10 minutes, and it resets your melatonin. What that does is allows you to go to sleep easier at night. 2 to 10 minutes in the morning, just go outside. That's
So,
like the best thing.
Wow.
so what an odd hack that it's how you wake up that helps you sleep better. That's really cool.
Yeah. Also, if you want to be more creative and innovative, that's part of like not checking your phone and doing that stuff either, and allowing your brain to actually do what sleep is supposed to do, which is get us creative and thinking differently.
Mm-hmm. No, it's great. Yeah, it gets the brain going, working right, and then sleep is a natural reaction, right? So if you're doing everything else right, sleep should follow. And that kind of flows with what you were talking about in the rules of the mind of the physical and the mental kind of following suit by doing things with the physical. So that's great. Well, great. Let me look at the chat here. Do we have any questions? Panelists, do you have anything else you'd like to add before
I
we
was
wrap up?
just gonna add, when Mindy was talking about like being able to talk about other things aside from work, we do form, which from my mentor Ron Price, family or food, occupation, recreation, relaxation, mission or mantra. So if you have nothing else to think about, just think of form, and you can communicate in other ways and get people thinking. And if you have nothing more to say to somebody, then just think of form and what have you not already covered within that. And then the other thing I was going to add too is with moving and back when we were all at the office at Pepper Shock, we did a Moby minute. And so on the hour, every hour, it was 1 minute. You got up, we didn't even really talk. We just did our thing. We either did wall sits or move or, so still I kind of, if we're on a Zoom call for a long period of time, I get people moving and do some sort of yoga pose or I'll have somebody else lead it. Even if it's just for 1 minute to move around, because you're right. Like, I think you said that like sitting is the new smoking, right? So definitely having to move and, not being able to stare at a screen forever. So that, and then the other thing I was just going to say too is, just having that connection, since people right now aren't able to hug each other. They're not able to, be around each other. So looking for that mental health and wellness as another aspect of it, just by reaching out to people because now we can't hug, so the endorphins aren't released. So the next best thing is laughter.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
That's great advice. So I have a question for any of the panelists. So, oftentimes we find, you do end up sitting at your desk in front of your computer quite a bit of the time of your day, on the phone, or now on Zoom meetings, right? So I find myself, and I'm sure many others probably do too, is, 3 o'clock hits, 2:30, 3 o'clock hits, and I feel like my energy level has just crashed. My mind gets foggy. Is there any advice that you could maybe give us that kind of help both, ourselves as well as maybe our teams to kind of get energized, some things that maybe activities to do to rewire some of our brain and get ourselves moving again and get productive in the afternoons?
I would say the studies on the most productive people are at about 52 minutes an hour. They do exactly what she just talked about, is that 1 minute. So set your timer for 50 to 60 minutes, and then you work solid. You don't have interruptions that 50 to 60 minutes, but when you get up, a quick hack is closing your eyes and just bouncing in place. What that does is it changes the logistics of your brain. So when you close your eyes and bounce, it resets a lot of, and recalibrates a lot of our nervous system, but you have to actually get up and close your eyes, and it feels weird, but I promise you, if you do that every hour, we call it the witching hour, 3:30. It's when like you just feel spent. My brain is fried. I'm not producing anything worthwhile. Working 8 hours doesn't do a damn thing if you're not like producing good quality work of service to others. So the witching hour is totally eliminated if you just get up and literally take a minute every hour, and you will be more productive the rest of the day. Actually, you won't even have to work the rest of the day because you're going to get so much more done up until the witching hour. You'll be surprised.
That's the time I choose to meditate a lot of times if I'm at home. So that 20 minutes of meditation, it clears my brain, it energizes me, and then I can go back and focus really well. Also like walking and just getting out and getting some fresh air and moving your body.
Outside is key. We don't realize how much we're stuck inside. I mean, even if you just get up and walk around your house, that's it. It really the air outside is so healing, and a lot of the things that we have access to for free, we just don't take advantage of. And so I'm saying, please know that it's not selfish to take care of yourself. It's actually the most selfless act we can do, to take care of ourselves first so we can be in service to others.
Well, I think that really ties in, and great way to wrap up this leadership intelligence, right? Of being intelligent about how we live our lives, to give ourselves permission. A lot of people are driven and they think, oh, if I'm not at my desk, then I must not be doing it right. And give yourself permission to take that break, if it's 1 minute or 20 minutes, whatever it might be, but to really get yourself working correctly and working creatively so you can actually be more productive and get past this mindset of I have to log a certain number of hours. Perfect. Well, great. Well, thank you so much, everybody. We have a few more minutes left, but I don't see any more chat questions. Any other questions from the panelists before we wrap up?
I can add to the idea of nap time. I actually put a couch in my office, and because I have creative people, some people are really, really great being they're morning people. I'm not. And other people want to work later. So we actually have different start times at our office, and then our daily huddle is at 10 a.m. And some people, that's the start of their day. Other people, they've been at work since 7:30 or 7 in the morning, and it staggers. So then the witching hour kind of changes for everyone. So that everybody's all like drained at the same time, because it does have that ebb and flow. And I also uncover when people are the most creative, most productive. And if I try to make people who are not morning people work early in the morning, it's pointless. It's useless, and vice versa. So being flexible with your schedules is very important.
I also think, like, don't judge, which is what you did, Ray, is I'm not going to judge. A lot of people are like, well, if you're not a morning person, then you're, not working, or, and that's just not the case, because people do have the different times where they work best, and they're more, in fact, Susan said to me last night, I think you're most creative at 8 p.m.
Yeah.
And so, like, not judging where other people are. And I think that's a great leadership trait.
I'm a night owl, so I can't be a hypocrite and tell people to work early when, I don't do my best early in the morning either.
Exactly. Getting to
Britt,
know.
what time did you get my handout last night?
Exactly. I think I was in bed already. So.
Yeah.
Well, great. So great panel. Thank you so much for the expertise. There's so much more wisdom and insight and information with these panelists. So I encourage you to reach out to them. We will get the information. Reach out to me if you need help getting contacted with them. But there's so much more to be had here. This is just a small sampling, if you will, of that. But hopefully it was helpful for you, that you're able to take some of these tools and implement them in your life and into your business right away and really help you be more productive. So with that, I'll say thank you, and we'll catch you in a couple of weeks. I think July 14th is our next session. That will be on turnarounds and bankruptcies. Not a great topic, but a very necessary one. Some great strategies and tactics that people can use to help their business if it's not in a great place right now. So be sure to share this with your friends and colleagues that might be able to benefit. So, well, thank you so much. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.